Hey, what's happening, everyone? Welcome back. And if it's your first time here, just plain welcome. It's 2A Tuesday, and I've got something a little different. This is another interview I did while at the National Rifle Association annual meeting. I got a chance to sit down with Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed. He's kind of a big deal in the 3D printing firearm world, and I got a chance to talk to him about a new product that his company has. See, privately made firearms were a bit of a thing, and then they weren't because the Biden administration kind of cracked down. This went to the Supreme Court in the Vanderstock ruling, which we'll get into in a little bit. But Cody thinks that his product gets around those restrictions, and I'm genuinely fascinated by this. Not only does it seem to get around these restrictions, but it opens up a lot of possibilities for a lot of people. So with that, I am going to fire up the interview and check it out. All right, so I am here with Cody Wilson. Cody,
Yes,
what's your official title at Defense Distributed?
I'm the Director of Defense Distributed.
Director. Okay, great. And for people who are unfamiliar, what is Defense Distributed?
It's a good question. We call it a defense contractor, our Defense Distributed, but it mostly is a brand that owns a number of companies that are more familiar to people. Ghost Gunner, GhostGuns.com. You know, we develop commercial DIY gun components and projects in the space.
Awesome. And you are the coolest thing about the first time I ever heard of Cody was this little thing called the Liberator, and that was the first all 3D printed firearm.
It has
enough metal to be legal.
You know, it has that reputation.
Yes.
Of course.
Which I love because the history of the name.
Oh yeah.
You know, the Liberator pistol.
Classic name.
And then it kind of resembles it in a way.
Yes, it's like that FP45. And I think that's why the team thought Liberator would be a good name.
Yeah.
And of course it has this like legacy story, you know, like the original Liberator never really happened, but this Liberator did. And it was the pattern for all future 3D gun releases. We would drop it on the internet. Anyone in the world could have a 3D gun. And that was such a necessary part of the story of 3D guns. That's why the Liberator is thought of as the first 3D gun. It was the first 3D gun deployed like something like the FP45.
Yeah, and it is effectively, in my view, the gun that kills gun control.
Forever and ever and ever, right? Even though it's this ancient, strange relic now.
Yeah, because there have, obviously people took that idea and ran with it, came up with their own designs.
Absolutely.
It's the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's like you could build a Liberator for shits and giggles, but there's a lot of other designs. Like I saw a 3D printed, basically a pepper box.
And some of those were early innovations too. I mean, but I always find people come back and build a Liberator. They've built all these cool, PDWs and all these little, I don't know, carbines, PCCs, and they say, oh, but I forgot to do the Liberator. It's still something that people at least return to. They check off their bucket list, and I like that.
It's almost like the gun version of Benchy.
Yeah, I hope. I think it is something like that.
It's like,
And I've seen little micro Liberators printed and stuff as
oh, that's amazing.
And,
yes.
It's got this profile that it will always be remembered.
Yeah. And y'all got a new product.
We have a new product. Fast forward, we have a new product.
Right. This is a new product because, the term ghost gun,
I like the term.
It's a fun time. I have fun with it. I use it. I may put it in quotation marks, but
it is. So many people were cynical about that term in 2014 when DeLeon in California popularized it, and we made fun of those people. And yet, I understand that term became a handle that allowed our enemy, our opponent, to get a grasp of this activity and regulate it, and that's not good. So I understand not breathing life, or not wanting to breathe life into that term, and yet the term succeeds.
And it's, it was designed to be a scary term.
Yeah.
But I find it very easy shorthand. Like I may call some privately made firearms, but
I'll tell you, man, not just here in Atlanta, anywhere I go where people don't even know anything about guns, they're like, what do you do? I'm like, well, do you know about ghost guns? Like, I've heard of that. Obviously, the media has done its job.
Yes.
And this is at least, got some cultural currency. And I always think that there's something to do with that. Even if they're winning in some sense, the term is useful.
Well, they're a derogatory term stops being derogatory when you own it.
Yeah, of course. And that's always an option.
Yeah.
That is always an option.
Absolutely. And like we talked yesterday, and I've talked about my first AK was essentially a ghost gun. This is pre 2014.
Before you even knew that you were building a ghost gun.
Right.
Yeah,
If somebody said you're building ghost guns, and we're like,
Yeah.
what?
What do you mean?
What are those?
Why? What do you mean? And that sounded so ridiculous even as late as 2014. But obviously the ghost gun thing also includes not just 3D printing, which inspired it, but companies like Polymer 80 had built and maintained these commercial kits. And the kits themselves is what the government fought as the ghost gun and then had so much success.
Yeah. And it's because of the history of building your own gun in the country. I doubt they can ever really do anything about 3D printed guns.
So the Supreme Court says in its recent opinion, and I found it to be an incredible concession, not 10, 12 years later, where the Supreme Court itself is saying, well, of course we can't stop 3D printing. That's an amazing thing to hear.
Exactly.
Now, I say, if you give Gavin Newsom a chance, I'm sure he'll come up with some ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
But so far, so good. And so, sure, that's the silver lining of this whole ghost gun saga. And yet, I don't want to, and with this new product we're going to talk about, I don't want to give up on the idea that you can still do G19 pistols at home with kit components. I think that's still there, and there's a huge market demand for it.
Right. And the product is the G80.
We call it the G80.
And it is this really neat frame insert.
I should just because it's over there, I feel like I should have one and hold it. But maybe YouTube won't allow that? Is that like the...
It's not a gun yet.
Well, no, I know that. I just don't know.
I'm not monetized, so I don't give a shit.
Oh, well, if you're not monetized...
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, Sebastian. Hey, can we have a fixture and an 80?
A few moments later.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, so you're looking at that traditional almost, that classic Polymer 80 clamshell style fixture, and you're holding, an 80% what we call a Glock style FCU, fire control unit. You're welcome to hold that out. That's the 80% of what we call the chassis or the fire control unit. And again, a solution here is, can I just go into the Supreme Court opinion?
A little bit, yeah, sure.
So much of this product, it only makes sense after that opinion. And so the way we're selling this now, which we've just announced at NRA, is a response to that Supreme Court opinion. The court says those polymer pistol frames that Polymer 80 was selling, they already look too much like a finished pistol frame. Right. They already look too much like one, let alone that you don't have to do that much to them to finish them. And so the court says not only does it look like the thing, but it takes less than an hour, and with common tools, that's too fast. So the court is actually giving us guidelines, even when it kind of thinks it isn't, in its rather complacent and cowardly opinion. And so the G80 is made of steel instead of polymer, and it has more substantial metal fixtures, but you can still finish it like a Polymer 80. It's just going to, if you use hand tools, it's going to take you longer than an hour to do that, not much longer. But of course, that's the court's standard. And so that inconvenience is now packaged conveniently for you at home.
Yeah, and it's, you use hand tools or uncommon tools.
Uncommon tools. And of course, the project is designed around uncommon tools first. And that is one of the other standards that the Supreme Court suggests. So of course, you can finish an FCU like this, what we call our G80, on our Ghost Gunner machine. But you're not required to invest in a machine to do this. Like Polymer 80, people want to be able to get these fixtures and do this kind of work in this tidy package at home. There's like a huge Polymer 80 sized hole in the market, and we're catering, to those people.
Yeah, because like I have a bench grinder.
Yes.
So because you remove these pieces.
Yes.
And that with a platen will take care of that.
So much of these obstacles can be. I mean, if you can imagine a way to mill or grind this down, of course you can.
Yeah.
It's a matter of, the more tools that are required or involved in your case, I think that's better, according to the new Supreme Court standard.
Yeah.
Hey, it actually took me 2 days to do it. Great. Okay.
Yeah. And to me, one of the neatest things about this is you can then print.
Yes.
Or you guys sell injection molded.
Yes, both.
Fixtures that this drops into.
We call them like the SIG pistols. We call them grip modules because, of course, they're no longer frames. If frames are the regulated component. So, of course, printed grip modules, but other things like we've been demonstrating in NRA, PDW, type enclosures or other chassis for your chassis. Very cool.
And they also got this really ridiculous thing they call the gripazine.
Gripazine. We should get it. Well, we won't get it. But
But it's a neat concept that kind of, you know,
it's let's see, with barely a little cotter pinning, you know, you can remove things very quickly. You can take this structure and an attached slide in and out of ready-made enclosures or chassis.
yeah,
And that's new. That's a way of thinking about, and of course SIG and other people have like suggested already this direction. It's not like we invented the fire control unit, but to do it in 80% and to do it in a way that people had become accustomed, like in the Polymer 80 style, I think that's the innovation, and that's what the market demands and wants and had missed.
and it does not look like a gun.
That's another thing. And one of these ATF tests that the Supreme Court doesn't really address is what it calls its clearly identifiable standard. Well, you know, is this clearly identifiable as an unfinished component of a pistol? I think not. At least it hasn't had time to become a standard that people are used to, at least with Glock style pistols.
Right.
And so it meets that test that the ATF thought it was so clever in creating.
And it's like the handful of people who may see it as a component,
Yes.
they may look at it and go, oh yeah, this is where the rail slides or something. It's
Of course.
it's
but
not
you would
going to
have
look like,
be-
you're not going to think of it as this is the frame. It's
only
going to look like a part.
only a firearms specialist is even going to put that
Right.
together. What, even in the Gorsuch opinion, there is a page where you see a Polymer 80 frame
Mhm.
and a finished Glock frame, and Gorsuch says, look at how similar these two things are. They already look like pistols. That's not what's going on here.
This
And
does-
if the Supreme Court's going to be so lazy and adopt a I know it when I see it approach, this busts the I know it when I see it approach.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, that's probably a good chunk of
Yes.
what's awesome about this.
Yes, I think so too.
Pushing boundaries.
I agree.
You know, if they're going to draw a line, let's see how far we can push it.
Well, and it's great that you say that, because even the Supreme Court says, you know, we're not here to draw lines today. Fine. We'll draw some lines.
Mhm.
Okay, we the people have the power to do that line drawing. And one version of this is selling this thing in commerce.
Yeah.
And we'll let the market draw the line. We'll let the market judge.
And it's like, I don't do a lot of, you know, talking about products here, but the political ramifications of this are so cool to me.
We can at least anticipate something significant because Polymer 80 became so successful.
Yeah.
And so much of what happened in those years after and just before this Vanderstock opinion was about punishing the success of that one company, Polymer 80.
Right. Because, again, people have been buying 80% receivers for years.
Before they were even called 80% receivers. In fact, our industry, this NRA industry, so much of this AR-15 work, 1911 work, it all depends on unfinished components from some subcontractor,
Yeah.
often sent from overseas. That's how modern capitalism works. Okay,
Yes.
so it's not like some fiendish invention that we found a way to. So much of our 80% space we found was just selling what the big industrial OEMs were already using. That's what an AR-15 80% receiver is.
Mhm.
No guy like me, no crazy dude invented that. It just existed that way because of decades of ATF precedent. And now everyone wants to turn around and pretend there's some scourge upon the union because people figured out that they can take unfinished components and finish them at home.
Right. And of course, that's always been a thing to a certain degree.
It should have always been a thing if it
It should.
wasn't.
It should. You know, the right to keep and bear arms.
Making guns at home is obviously how guns have been made, because there were guns and there were homes, and that was the only place to make them until only very recent history.
Yeah, then it really before the founding and during the founding
Yeah.
era,
Yeah.
the gunsmith might have a shop, but a lot of times it was adjacent to their home,
Well, of course,
and those are full-time gunsmiths.
the Pennsylvania rifle, the Kentucky style
Yeah.
rifle, right? This is made in these backwoods shops by these craftsmen who are, yes, they're no more subsistent than a farmer or something. They're living out in the wilderness, making guns in their own workshop. And how could it have been any other way?
Yeah, there weren't factories.
Right. Factories start because so many people were making guns at home.
Yeah, and it just became profitable. It made sense.
They go to the Connecticut River Valley and decide to use some water power and begin making guns for other people. But like, that's the birth of modern industry, not industrial guns. I'm sorry, but no, making guns at home is the birth of modern American industry itself. We've got the cart so far ahead of the horse on this one.
Yeah, and this is such a simple thing.
Yeah.
I'm just absolutely.
Yes.
'Cause
And
I'm looking-
I love like all great innovations or something.
Mhm.
There's nothing about it that is itself particularly innovative. It's a combination of other people's sincere contributions. No, Paul and Brady, the largest contributor among them. And yet, with all these new combinations and the Supreme Court factor, this could be magic.
Yeah. And the great thing about this is that if you had just one of these, you also have an infinite number of guns.
Right. We've been talking about that with European people too. It's like the way they regulate guns is differently out there. If this is regulated or the serialized component and nothing else is, yeah, you've basically given yourself a huge flexibility, a range of different guns that you actually have if this is your control unit.
Because you can drop it in a PDW. You can, somebody can design components to make this a pistol caliber carbine.
Where regulation matters, and it's a big tax on you to just get one, you're more likely to get a gun in this style.
Yes.
Because now one is many, like you've said. And even we're thinking about, off-roster situations in California. It's like, is there a way in this configuration and a certain other edition to get it into California? Things like this begin to help you answer those questions.
Well, California, they say you can make your own gun, but you have to serialize it.
They say a lot of things in California. Let's say it's serialized. Let's just say it's serialized, right? Okay, well, you know that you can't necessarily buy this brand new gun as a brand new serialized G19 style pistol.
Right.
But perhaps this was some kind of strange bolt action pistol or single shot or something, because do you at least see the road I'm trying to go down here?
Because this is the part that can come out and be modular.
There are new questions to be answered that even California may not have answered with the addition of something like the G80.
This is, and we've talked about this for a while.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
And I've been intrigued with it from jump.
Thank you.
And in part because I do not like the idea of making me go through the process of having to fill out. It's like I filled out Form 4473.
Of course.
I've got multiple guns that I bought through licensed dealers. I've done it. It's not that I have a moral problem. Not that it can't pass the background check. I just shouldn't have to do that for everything. I shouldn't have to do it for anything. But
I understand that.
And
it's a joke to pretend that all the people who feel that way, like the media does, are criminals,
right,
or aspiring criminals. It's not the case. People demand a sense of privacy, a sense of specific ownership over their work.
Well, as a child of the 80s, one of the movies that hit me pretty hard was a movie called Red Dawn. And I don't know if a lot of people remember, but there's a scene right at the beginning of that movie where the invaders show up and immediately say, go to the gun store, look for the Form 4473s. That tells you who's got guns.
Of course. No one in this environment, especially after COVID and the contested elections and stuff, no one truly trusts this government.
No.
Obviously, the ghost gun conversation is also a part of conversation of suspicion of our government.
Yep.
And I will never challenge anyone for being suspicious. You can never be too suspicious.
Oh.
I get it. This is also just a cool new way to do a Glock at home. And it's fun for that reason. And of course you can 3D print. And we're hoping that now there's a decent overlap in ways there haven't really been before in the 80% space and the 3D printing space. We hope that this will kind of bring the best of both worlds and more people to each side of that activity.
Well, I'm definitely going to be picking one of these up myself.
Thank you, sir. And you would pick it up at g80.com, by the way.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to put it together. Probably get a 3D printer first, which I will be probably bugging
You don't have a 3D printer?
I do not have one yet.
Oh, he doesn't have a 3D printer.
I don't have one yet.
Oh, my God.
My son and I both want one.
Yeah.
We just haven't gotten around to doing it.
Okay.
But we're definitely,
This should be your occasion, sir.
yes, absolutely. And I'm gonna do some crazy shit.
Good.
Yeah, I'm gonna get ridiculous with this.
Good.
And then I'm gonna put it on video.
Let's do it. I'll send you one.
Awesome. That'd be great.
Thank you for this opportunity to talk about G80.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad we finally got the chance to sit down
Dude, me
and have
too.
this conversation.
Me too. For real.
Yes.
Hey, long time coming. And I'm happy
Absolutely.
to do it.
So on that, we're gonna wrap this one up.
Thank you, sir.
All right, appreciate it. So yeah, that was Cody Wilson of Defense Distributed. Some people like him, some people can't stand him. I don't really care one way or another. I think he's got a cool product. I think this is a fascinating thing because, like we said in there are a lot of ways you can print different inserts. They've got a bunch of designs of their own. They also, it's wide open. You can just design this and drop it in to almost anything. And I think that is seriously fascinating. And it opens the door up for privately made firearms once again. And who knows, other people can come up with new things. Plus, if the Trump administration does decide to roll back the ghost gun regulations that we talked about, which is on the table. The Supreme Court didn't say they had to be in place, only that they could be. If those get rolled back, this doesn't change anything. It's still an option for people. So I'm genuinely fascinated by this. 3D printing is probably the only new technology that's fascinated me in a long, long time. I can't wait to see where this goes. I think there will be challenges to this, but it sounds like Cody's done his homework. He likes to butt right up to the line and see just how thick that line is before, it's called foul. I love that, especially on something like the Second Amendment. So on that, I am going to wrap this one up. Down below, we got like, we got subscribe, notification bell. Tell me what you think about the G80, about this concept in general, or privately made firearms. What's your take on it? While you're down there, again, like, subscribe, notification bell, etc., etc. And if my X profile's down there, check that out. If you want to support the channel, there's a coffee link down there. We are not monetized yet, so yeah, I could use some help. But on that note, I am going to wrap it up, and I will see you all in the next video.